We had a discussion on Sunday morning show about the media, the mainstream TV, and how they stitch up commentators who are often of the so-called left. I'd like to play you a little clip to show you an example of this, and then I'm going to go on to some of your appearances on TV and how you have dealt with it. This is Aaron Bastani on This Week a couple of years ago.
Aaron Bastani, why, in the words of Robert Winston, is anti-Semitism endemic now in the Labour Party?
I think there's a few explanations. One is the party's membership's tripled in the last few years, so obviously there's been a mass increase in people that could potentially be persuaded by these ideas. I agree with what you're saying about digital culture. I think the internet has a huge role to play. I think if you look at that mural, there wasn't just the anti-Semitic trope of these 6 elderly men playing Monopoly. There was, Masonic symbolism. There was somebody holding a placard saying New World Order. And this was like a melange of online conspiracy theories. And for me, it had always been a constant background noise. I hadn't really taken it very seriously until maybe the Trump election. And with Labour, I knew it was there online. Personally, in my CLP, it'd always been very cordial. So there was a distance there. But when I saw the Corbyn response to this mural...
Okay, look, I won't play it all. It's quite tedious. But what I wanted to direct your attention to was the question: why is there such a problem with anti-Semitism in the Labour Party? And he goes for it. He goes right into it. He doesn't question the question at all. Now, what I've been looking at since we discussed the problems that some people on the left have with these discussion shows is how you have reacted to similar situations. I'm just going to play you one here.
Well, welcome back to Sunday Live here on Sky News. Joining me now is a man not known for sitting on the fence. He passionately opposed the invasion of Iraq, and now he feels that Hezbollah is justified in attacking Israel. The Respect MP for Bethnal Green is in our central London studio. A very good evening, good morning rather, to you, Mr. Galloway. How do you justify your support for Hezbollah and its leader, Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah?
What a preposterous way to introduce an item, and what a preposterous first question. 24 years ago, on the day my daughter was born, and I've just celebrated her 24th birthday, I had to dash to the maternity hospital to see her given birth from a mass demonstration in London against the Israeli invasion and occupation of Lebanon. Israel has been invading and occupying Lebanon all of my 24-year-old daughter's life. The Hezbollah are a part of the Lebanese national resistance, who are trying to drive, having successfully driven most Israelis from their land in 2000, Israel from the rest of their land, and to get back those thousands of Lebanese prisoners who were kidnapped by Israel under the terms of their illegal occupation of Lebanon. It's Israel that's invading Lebanon. It's Israel that's attacking Lebanon, not Lebanon that's attacking Israel. You've just been carrying a report of 10 Israeli soldiers on the border getting ready to invade Lebanon, and you ask us to mourn that operation as if it were some kind of war crime. Israel is invading Lebanon and has killed 30 times more Lebanese civilians than have died in Israel. So it's you who should be justifying the evident bias which is written on every line on your face and is in every nuance of your voice and is loaded in every question that you ask.
Right, you put your finger on the button.
Now, I couldn't help laughing when I watched that. Compared with Aaron Bastani's answer, you actually had at the end on the defensive. When did you learn? Did you do some training on this, or is it something that you just picked up from experience?
No, I never had any training, but I'm more than happy to give training because when I saw Aaron Bastani, a person who is not always wrong and not always weak, sometimes good, bit more than a stop clock twice a day, but that was not his finest hour. And you've juxtaposed it with what was one of my finest hours. So perhaps it's a little bit misleading in that regard. But he accepted the false premise of the interviewer's question, and I did not. And I found the words, though it was 7 o'clock in the morning, which is why I look a little bedraggled. I found the words with which to reject the fake premise. Bastani swallowed the false premise, hook, line, and sinker, and was sunk from there on in. He should have said, well, let me put it another way. I would have said, but it isn't endemic in the Labour Party. You're just making that up. That's what I would have said as my first answer.
Yeah, and what's it like before the interview when you're in one of those situations in the studio? Do they give you any idea what they're going to say? And do they try and make you feel like they're your mate? Do you have to have a kind of critical mind as soon as you get in there? Is that the key to it as well?
Well, I think they do with someone. Aaron looked to me a prisoner, a Stockholm Syndrome prisoner there, and I can understand how that happened. There he was sitting next to an eminent peer and eminent doctor, and Andrew Neil, probably the best of all the BBC political heavyweights. So I suspect that he felt a bit out of his depth. I suspect he felt a bit amateur, but that's potentially fatal, as we saw in that interview. I go in steeled, and this is again a second piece of advice. It doesn't matter what the questioner asks me. I know what my answer is going to be. I go into the studio with the verbal hand grenades in my pocket. You can pause for a moment, as I did on that Sky News interview, to, chuckle and say how preposterous it is and so on, and then go on to say what you arrived there to say. This is not a student union jape. It's an opportunity for you on national television, albeit at 7 in the morning, although more than 100 million people have watched that clip and growing still. The point is you're getting an opportunity. And also a third piece of advice. Once the interview has started, especially if it's live, you're in charge, not the other fellow. You can keep talking when he wants you to stop. You can say whatever you like, whether he likes it or not. And it's vital to know that you are in charge, not he. He, as she was in the Sky News studio, she was all at sea. She had someone talking in her ear, desperately trying to divert things, to intervene, to save the Sky News party line. But she was not up to the job, which is my fourth piece of advice. You need to know your stuff. You see, if Bastani had been able to say, you just made that up, there's not 0.000.3 cases of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. This is a politically driven kamikaze attack on Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. Dr. Winston is here because he wants rid of Jeremy Corbyn. You want rid of Jeremy Corbyn. These are the things that he should have said. As I did actually from Liverpool on Sky News, on another clip. I don't know if you have that easily.
Look, we haven't got very long, so I've got a couple more. These made me laugh. I wasn't feeling too good. I was poorly with some kind of flu, and I just saw these clips, and it made me laugh because what you've done here.
George Galloway, you've described this as the most sensational upset in history. I think you got a little bit carried away. There were two previous results with bigger swings, but it is pretty sensational nevertheless. What do you put it down to?
No, I don't think I was exaggerating. If you'll forgive me, I'm a bit of a student of these matters. No party to the left of Labour has ever taken a Labour seat in a period when Labour has been in opposition. And by the way, after the mother of all bad weeks for the government, the condemned Liberal coalition. So I think it was the most sensational, but
we won't get hung up on this point, but there were bigger swings in 1983 and I think 1967.
Well, you obviously didn't hear what I said. It's understandable. I'm in the street. I'm not talking about the swing. I'm talking about a party to the left of Labour seizing a seat from Labour whilst Labour is in opposition and after a very bad week for the government.
Right, you're defining your terms very clearly and quite narrowly, but within those terms, a sensational victory, what do you put it down to?
I don't know why you're being so churlish about this. I know more about left-wing history than you do, I assure you. But anyway, I put it down to a tidal wave of alienation in the country, and not just in Bradford, against the Tweedledee, Tweedledum politics of the major parties. If a backside could have three cheeks, they would be the three cheeks of that backside. People want something different. They want leaders that they can believe. They want leaders who say the same thing wherever they are and whenever they say it, whether before an election or afterwards. And I think we saw what I described last night as a Bradford Spring moment, a kind of uprising, a peaceful, democratic uprising of especially young people.
Isn't it slightly presumptuous or even arrogant, though, to compare a by-election victory with a revolution that has claimed tens of thousands of lives across the Arab world?
Well, I can see you and I are not getting on very well, and probably that's a sign that I should go and do one of the many other interviews that are waiting for me. You obviously weren't listening, or you're not hearing me. I said a peaceful, democratic uprising, a peaceful, democratic uprising. That's what I think it was. You evidently don't. We'll see if it comes to anything. Thanks very much, because I really do have a lot of very important interviews to do.
Now that made me laugh, because you just thought, well, I'm not interested in this. Is there a point where you have to just write off the whole thing because they're so intent on undermining your position, your credibility, your whatever points you're making?
Yeah, timing is important, though. You mustn't do it every time, and you have to have a kind of credible reason for doing it, or the viewer will sympathize with the interviewer rather than you. But as she began and continued the interview with negative denigration in the hours after what was, as I said, the most sensational political result in British political history, it would have been far better for her to have accepted that, just ignored it. If she doesn't agree with it, go on to the substance of the matter. She so clearly was not prepared to go on to the substance of the matter that I think the viewer's sympathy was with me. And if you're going to take your microphone off, make sure you can easily slip the cords and don't get caught like John Knott did, struggling to take off his microphone during the Falklands War. Right.
Now, we're coming on to the two top clips of your that I found on YouTube. They're probably not. There's probably far more than these, but the first one is obviously the one that everybody knows and loves, where you were grilled for apparently taking money for oil, which sounds absolutely preposterous. This is the clip that I've made of that.
Mr. Galloway, I'm pleased to have you before the committee today. What I'm going to do is briefly summarize the evidence before I give you a chance to give your sworn testimony. The Oil for Food program was used to support those who were favorable to Iraq. Former Iraqi Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Aziz and Iraqi Vice President Taha Yassin Ramadan confirmed this. I would think that you would admit that your efforts to oppose the sanction were well received. Before we begin, pursuant to Rule 6, all witnesses who testify before the subcommittee are required to be sworn. This time I would ask you to rise and please raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give before the subcommittee is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. We will be using a timing system today, Mr. Galloway. We can have 10 minutes for opening statement. If you need more time, we'll certainly accommodate that. And you may proceed.
Senator, I am not now, nor have I ever been, an oil trader, and neither has anyone on my behalf. I have never seen a barrel of oil, owned one, bought one, sold one, and neither has anybody on my behalf. Now, I know that standards have slipped over the last few years in Washington, but for a lawyer, you're remarkably cavalier with any idea of justice. I'm here today, but last week, you already found me guilty. You traduced my name around the world without ever having asked me a single question, without ever having contacted me, without ever having written to me or telephoned me, without any contact with me whatsoever. And you call that justice. Now, I want to deal with the pages that relate to me in this dossier, and I want to point out areas where there are, let's be charitable and say, errors. And then I want to put this in the context that I believe it ought to be. On the very first page of your document about me, you assert that I have had many meetings with Saddam Hussein. This is false. I have had 2 meetings with Saddam Hussein, once in 1994 and once in August of 2002. By no stretch of the English language can that be described as many meetings with Saddam Hussein. As a matter of fact, I've met Saddam Hussein exactly the same number of times as Donald Rumsfeld met him. The difference is Donald Rumsfeld met him to sell him guns and to give him maps, the better to target those guns. I met him to try and bring about an end to sanctions, suffering, and war, and on the second of the 2 occasions, I met him to try and persuade him to allow Dr. Hans Blix and the United Nations weapons inspectors back into the country. A rather better use of 2 meetings with Saddam Hussein than your own Secretary of State for Defense made of his.
Right, now I can't obviously play all of that, but the pressure you had there going to another country in this big grand building with lots of media and then all this long 6 minutes of allegations against you, you must have been nervous.
Only about Mark Regev, the later Israeli ambassador to London, sitting right behind me in that clip I've just noticed. He was then at the Washington embassy and had obviously come along to sit right behind me to watch my goose being cooked, but that's not how it turned out, of course. Again, you got to know your case. People often say, well, you didn't even have any notes. But by that time on the issue of Iraq, I had no need of notes. I knew everything about the Iraqi case, both before and after the invasion. And of course, I knew my own conduct and had no need to write down what I had done or not done. So no, it was easy peasy for me. I wasn't nervous at all. It was a great opportunity for me. All these television cameras were a means by which I could put the Bush and Blair Iraq invasion on trial. And again, by the grace of God, I found the words and I did so, and it liveth on.
Well, is it a sense of, how can I put it, like a sense of moral right that makes you confident? Because if you don't have that feeling of moral righteousness, or then you would be nervous, wouldn't you? Is that
Yeah.
the key? Because some people who go on media, they probably don't have any sense of moral righteousness. They just say what they think would go down well. But you seem to know what's moral and what isn't.
To get the opportunity, to use an Arabic saying, to tell the truth in the court of the Sultan or the Pharaoh is an undreamt of opportunity that very few people have. Of course, there's a lot of people who wouldn't have the courage to do it. I suppose I'm liberated to some extent by, I don't want to swear on your podcast, but I don't give a toss, you see. I don't want anything from anybody. And nothing that matters to me can be taken away from me by anyone. And that is a liberating sense in which you can go into battle freely with. I should say, though, again, just as I said on the Bastani case, if you questioned me on pensions policy or even health policy or transport policy or things that I don't know very much about, well, I wouldn't be so impressive. It's important to know that I'm not, you know, a Renaissance man who knows everything about everything. I don't.
No.
But the things the things I do know about, I really, really know about. And you'd have to be up very early to beat me in an argument about them.
Now, look, we're running out of time, but I want to get the last one in, which to me is the most impressive because it just is unbelievable and is not given any plaudits as it should be, because this is, to me, is incredibly courageous.
Why is anti-Semitism rising in the UK?
Why is anti-Semitism?
And do you think a certain member of the panel may bear some responsibility for this?
Jonathan Friedland.
Somebody like George Galloway, who definitely has a following and an audience and has wonderful powers of rhetoric, we've heard them tonight, he and people like him need to exercise great responsibility in this area because it is incendiary, it's sensitive, and as we've seen from these figures today, it can lead to hate.
Okay. George Galloway.
Well, I see, David, that with characteristic care you have carefully balanced the audience this evening. The question.
I'll bring you in.
You can be the lions.
Let Mr.
You
Galloway
can be the
speak.
lions. I'll be Daniel. You will not stop me speaking. You will not stop me speaking. You will not stop me speaking, however much you shout. Because when the Charlie Hebdo affair erupted, there were millions of people demanding that freedom of speech should be protected. And no one in Britain will accept the right of those shouting at me now to exclude a British Member of Parliament from the BBC in any constituency in Britain. None of you will. Now, I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry that Jonathan Friedland, in what he has just said, has given credence to the absolutely false allegation implicit in the question. You see, I know about political violence. I was assaulted 3 times in 4 months in London. Well, you say I wonder why. This is, of course, making my point. You see, you're in favor of some political violence, but against other political violence. You're in favor of freedom of speech for some people,
You support
but not
Hezbollah and
for
bomb
other
Israeli
people.
cities.
Not a single, not one single spokesman for the Jewish community, not a single Jewish community newspaper condemned the assaults upon me, which have led to the imprisonment of one man and the fining of
All right,
two others.
George,
And
George, can you come?
Did
Can
you
you
set
come
me
to-
up here?
No, you're not.
Am
set
I
up
on
at all.
trial
No.
here? Well, let me
George,
speak.
answer the question.
Let me speak. I'm
George.
being bayed at by the audience.
All right, George.
I've been directly accused by another panelist. Let me answer.
What he accused you of, and what I'd like.
Right, look, I'll leave it. I'll leave it there. That people should really have a look at that clip if they can online. But the point of that is, it seems so clear to me you were set up, as you seem to be saying when you answered the question, that the audience members were so unbelievably angry at you from the start. The panelist was asked a question before you were given a chance to kind of give an intro that would make it more difficult for you. The question itself was personal and would never be asked of another panelist. And you just called it out from the start. You said, this is what's happening. And then you went on, if people watched the whole clip, to actually speak about the issues behind this. I mean, I've never seen anyone give you plaudits for that. I mean, people say Kinnock in the Labour conference when he took on Derek Hatton or something. But I mean, how did you find the courage to do that? I mean, how have you been used to being heckled? Is that something you were brought up with in politics?
No, not really. First of all, I'm not afraid of anyone other than God. I'm ready to face anyone. I have done. And I did that night. I was attacked. My wife and I were attacked on our way into the BBC car by a mob who were hammering the BBC car with Israeli Israeli flags on flagpoles. They were trying to break the window of the car with the flagpoles. But I am absolutely clear about what I stand for, and I'm ready to defend it unto death if necessary, and my children after that. So you have to have your courage. You have to screw it to the sticking post. You have to be ready to be Daniel in the lion's den. And the public will view it, I hope. I haven't seen that clip, actually, from that day and until now. And it's kind of brought a tear to my eye a little bit. You don't... they will view the lion less sympathetically than Daniel, and certainly history will, I think, because it was a scam. Sorry to be blunt. A false narrative, which had as its purpose not defending Jews from anti-Semitism, but of destroying Jeremy Corbyn and his chances of being the Prime Minister of Britain. That's what this narrative was designed for, and it succeeded. And we're all crying now